excited to have longtime friend, Christophe Choo, luxury real estate agent from Beverly Hills, legendary luxury real estate, and Jason Pantana. I have an outcome today, Christophe.
You have an outcome?
I have an outcome.
I'm shocked.
There is so many people that are fearful, lack the confidence. You know what I'm talking about as a coach. They say, God, I would love to have the high end. I would love to sell more expensive real estate. And it's even in their marketplace.
Yeah.
But there's just this like anxiety and fear because, you know, those high-end sellers are so different from everybody else.
Oh, they sure are.
I know, right? So what I want to unpack today is maybe some of the origin story of you getting in.
Okay.
I want to get into how do we get over the fear. I want to talk about marketing. I want to talk about, is follow-up different? Are presentations different? Like if somebody was just landed on this planet, right? Thinking of David Bowie right behind me, right? Ziggy Stardust, landed on this planet and decided not to be a rock star, but instead be a rock star, right? In the real estate business.
Yeah.
What would they have to do to break into Beverly Hills or Palm Beach or New York City?
Yeah.
So I want to explore all that. Does that sound fun?
I love it. Sounds
Cool.
great.
So for the people that don't know, which would shock me, right? Because I mean, you have been so kind to share my stage and so many other events that people ask you to speak at, and you've been in the industry for a long time.
Yeah.
Give them just a little backstory. Who's Christophe Choo?
Basically, I came from a regular family in LA. My mom was a hairdresser. My stepfather was in the art business. I wanted to be rich and live a fancy life. They couldn't afford me that. So I started working when I was 12, cleaning apartments, valet parking cars at 16, and working as a waiter. I did all the jobs because I wanted a life.
Right.
And I'd work.
But you didn't want just a life.
I wanted a fancy life.
Yes.
Luxury life. And so I'd work all week long back in those days to go to dinner one night a week.
Right.
Spend $300 in those days for dinner. So
that was a big deal as a 16-year-old.
yeah, it was. And I did school to go to the restaurants and get facials in Beverly Hills. So
Okay, so that's probably not how most real estate agents started, but everybody
Probably
has
not.
their origin story.
Yeah.
So when did you first get in the business?
well, I started because I was modeling, and
Yeah.
my wife Gabrielle, who you know,
Yeah.
she didn't like me being gone 3-4 months at a time with all these
Right.
beautiful models, partying and
Sure.
having fun.
Sure.
She says, "How about getting a more stable job?" And I'm like,
Oh, let's go into real estate.
"Yeah, no, stable." I was 18, and I'm like, she said, "How about real estate?"
Right.
And I thought, literally, as an 18-year-old, I can drive a fancy car, I can show pretty houses, be my own boss, and make a lot of money.
Right.
I didn't know about escrows, title, and I didn't know about any of this.
Solving problems for a living.
Didn't know.
Yeah,
So
crazy clients.
I
yeah.
took my test, got my license, and I started selling real estate. It was just that simple.
Now, were you then like in Glendale or where were you then?
So I
Because you
was
didn't start
living
in Beverly Hills.
No, I was living with my parents in Los Feliz.
Okay.
So I interviewed at the Los Feliz John Douglas Company, which was the best
Yes,
company back
yep.
in '89
Good old Jack.
or '88. Yes, Jack Douglas. They wouldn't hire me because the manager, she said, "What's your goal?" I said, "I want to make $1 million a year and drive a Rolls Royce."
Yeah.
He says, "You're not the right fit for the office."
Yeah.
So I went to the next office, which was Hancock Park, and they hired me.
Mm-hmm.
First year, I did one sale. It was a $43,000 co-op. I made $1,732. And then
Sounds like he remembers that.
Oh, I do.
Maybe a story there done.
because I'd spent probably $10,000 to get through the year, and you know.
Right.
And so she said to me, "Well, you've been here for a year now. You've only sold like one deal. You got 90 days. You're out of the office." So I went to a seminar where I learned how to prospect expired listings.
Yes.
And then I started coaching, and
Yeah.
that was kind of the beginning of really making money in the business.
So what year was that? That would have been
91.
Yeah, so 91 because you got in. Let's see.
88 or 89.
Yeah, because
when I
we
started.
basically started around the same time,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
me with my dad and
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, you're working
and,
you were working with your dad.
And
Yeah.
so Christophe's one of the original clients from my dad's company, like many moons ago.
Yep.
But like we had dinner last night. Like we've just become friends over decades and watching each other, grow and evolve.
Yeah.
So tell us about the transition from Los Feliz, because the way you described it last night, it wasn't Los Feliz the way maybe Dave Robles thinks about Los Feliz, or my friend Claudia Cole, who lived on the top of the hill, and they were like the hoity-toity family.
No.
Like,
we were south of the boulevard. That's where the poor people lived.
Right.
But luckily, my
Other side
parents
of
at
the
least bought a
tracks.
house in that area, right? South side of the tracks. And so when I was working in Hancock Park initially, I was doing pretty well after 5-6 years of prospecting.
Mm-hmm.
I think my top year was like 65 deals, but they were mostly first-time buyers, second-time sales. Average price.
Like second-time sales, aka expired listings.
Yeah. And I think it was 62 deals was my highest number of deals. I was one of the top agents, but it wasn't where I felt right at home.
Right.
I knew Beverly Hills was for me. You have to be in the space that you're comfortable.
Right.
And so when I was given the opportunity to go to Beverly Hills, I did it immediately and moved.
How did that opportunity arise?
I was a training director for the office,
Yeah.
and I was in.
But you were like 5 years old. You were the training director?
I was 23. My training director left.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I could train these people. and I can make money doing that.
Right.
So I made a proposal to Jack Douglas, like a 20-page, this is what I want to do for the training.
Yeah.
He hired me.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And so I was at your dad's management training in Newport Beach.
I remember.
At I think it was at Four Seasons at the time.
Yeah. Yep.
And Betty Graham was there and all the managers at Co-Banker. And
All legends.
yeah.
Yep.
Shout out to Betty Graham.
And they said, have you ever thought of coming to Beverly Hills? I said, absolutely. I've always wanted to. I've just never did anything about it. So
Yeah.
Betty says, come meet me tomorrow. And I met her and she says, would you like to join the office? I said, absolutely. I packed my stuff up and I was gone and that was it.
You switched companies or?
No, same company.
Okay.
I've always been in the same company. It was John Douglas.
it.
We became Coldwell
Yes,
Banker, but
yes.
I always knew that was the best company, so
Yeah.
I stayed. But I was just moving from Hancock Park, which is only a 5-mile difference.
Yes. But that 5 miles to maybe someone listening right now who, let's just say this person listening, they're selling $400,000 or $500,000 houses, and there's $1 million houses
Yeah.
within minutes, right? With
Yep.
pretty much, I mean, $1 million could be $2 million, could be 700,000, and
Yeah.
when you're selling $250,000 houses,
Yep.
that difference, not just in proximity but in price, freaks a lot of people out. You seem to be the opposite of it.
Yeah, that when you asked that question, that didn't quite make sense to me because the high-end luxury doesn't freak me out. I feel very comfortable in that realm. So when
Yes.
people say that, I've never really heard that so much. But it's interesting. I guess people always have fears of different things.
As a coach, how often do you hear that?
All the time.
Really?
So all the time, which I'm actually sitting here listening like a fly on the wall, and I'm kind of intrigued by your mindset in terms of how you enter into luxury, because there are a lot of agents who they feel intimidated. They feel like the expectation will be greater upon them and they won't be able to deliver the results, that somehow it's harder. And I've been having this conversation with a lot of clients. I was like, tell me how people are different. Tell me how this is different, because I don't buy it.
Yeah.
But this is worth definitely tapping into, because your mindset is
Where
vastly different.
It's on the list.
That's
It's
really
on the list.
never crossed my mind in terms of that. There's no.
You could be my new Jeff Mays. This is a microphone.
I said that earlier.
It's really effective when you talk into it.
We should have like a training video.
I'm going to have to do it like a
Be close to the mic,
pre-podcast
but I don't have a
training.
speak guard.
But no, yes.
I don't either.
So you talked about like at 16, we were talking about last night at dinner.
Yeah,
Like you're
yeah.
like literally I'd work all week. I would you were like cleaning apartments. You
Yep.
were doing like whatever it took
Any kind of job.
to create this opportunity, this lifestyle.
Yeah.
One could argue like, well, of course, that's why he's Christophe Choo in Beverly Hills. But how do I become that? What about today's mindset or the last 10 years mindset or the last 20 years have you learned about creating this mindset? Because there's just different levels of wealth.
Right.
And there's always someone that's going to be intimidating.
That's true.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, that's true.
Right? You're like, oh, I got like their level of wealth. I understand their level of wealth. Woo. Right? And that's how people look at it.
Yeah.
Like they must be different. They must be special. He doesn't have that mindset.
Well, can I? Well, I want to hear what he says, but I have a thought too. I want to ask you.
We have quite a few friends that are billionaires. And you have a lot of friends like that too.
Yeah.
I don't feel any different around them than my housekeeper or someone clean. I mean, I treat everyone the same. I mean, of course, the higher end clients, treat everyone the same.
Yeah.
The cleaning girl at the hotel room or the valet parker, they should be treated as nicely as your billionaire clients.
Yes.
That's number one.
Yeah.
I've just never had that thought or mind, maybe because I always searched it out. And I remember it was like 4 years into doing well. And I always believe you have to spend money to make money, number one. I said, we were talking at lunch today about coaching. And I said, I've been coaching for 29 years or 28 years, nonstop. And people are like, well, how do you pay for coaching? Or it's not about that. When I first started coaching, I wasn't even sure if my credit card would work for the $12,000, the initial fee.
Yeah.
But I knew in my mind, I said to Katie at lunch, I said, I knew if I spent the $12,000, I would make at least $120,000 in return the next. I just knew it.
Yeah.
So it was not even a question.
Yes.
What was the question again?
But so if you and I both have studied so much on mindset.
Yes. Yes.
Daily meditations, having the right environment, like all these things that we know that just make us energetically right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So unpack for just a second. If someone's listening right now and they're like, okay, there's definitely a more expensive area over here.
Okay.
There's the inward work and then the outward work. And we're going to get to
Correct.
both, right? So
Correct.
the inward is like your mindset, how you feel about yourself. Like, are you worthy of a $100,000 commission, $1 million commission check,
Yep.
which one of my clients just got? $1 million commission check on one deal and he moved on to the next one.
Yep.
Are you worthy? Then we'll get to the outward side, which is the marketing side. And like, how do you message? And then how do you communicate? So let's unpack all that.
Which is the funny thing about questions, because you and I were coaching. I was coaching with you at the time.
Yeah.
When I got my first $30 million listing.
I remember.
And I spent 8 hours that day. I was mentally prepared and psychologically, they were friends of mine.
Yeah.
But I still spent 8 hours with the presentation, getting ready.
Right.
So that if he asked the questions, I was really, spot on responding.
Yes. Don't worry, my friends. I will be asking you about preparation. That's coming up. That's on my list too. So what do you recommend to strengthen their mindset, or maybe just create a more abundant mindset or a more accepting mindset, or how would you maybe define it? Because I'm throwing words out there.
No, so first of all, your 10-10-10 book every day, I
Yeah.
still do that.
Yeah.
I write down all the 10 things that bother me and are in my mind. And
To
I do
let
that-
go of. Yeah.
And when you first told me about that, I thought, why would I write down all the negative things in my life? But
Right.
you're taking it out of your head and releasing
label.
it.
Releasing it over there.
So
Yeah.
what I actually do is I write it down and then I'll go outside and I burn it.
I love that.
And I see the.
Do you really?
I swear.
Because I've done that a million times where I'm like,
burn
this
it.
is just driving me insane. I've got to let it go. Write the letter to the person, write to the person that passed away that I love, that I'm just so disappointed with, or something. Write the letter, light it on fire. I don't know who came up with that concept. Probably some people doing ayahuasca. What's that crazy drug thing? Like, who knows?
But to me, the
Ayahuasca?
burning is
Yeah.
and I see it go in the air. So aside from that, I do affirmations every single day, usually with one of the Tom Ferry friends.
Yeah.
9 o'clock every morning. And we do, I do my 5 minutes, they do their 5 minutes. But one of the first things I do is I do the same kind of release, but mentally. I basically visualize all the things I'm worried about, stressed about, angry about, sad about, disappointed at. I talk about, and I literally do this on the phone. I'm like, I pull it from my toes, up my fingers, up to my shoulder, and I see it like steam coming out of a train out of my head, and it all just dissipates.
Yeah.
And it gives my body a more free space. Then I can do the gratitude.
Yeah.
And it's grateful for no matter what your day is like. I'm alive. I've got a home, a roof over my head, hot and cold water, and food, and
people that I love, people
my
that love
wife
me,
and
and
then I talk about my intentions and my expecting miracles every day. They don't happen every day, but I'm always saying I expect magic and miracles to happen each and every day. And somehow the next call is going to be that wonderful magical miracle, and it happens.
Right.
So if that's an everyday thing, no matter what.
Do you remember my dad used to talk about attitude, approach, and expectations?
Yeah.
You remember that? Like he's like, hey, if your attitude is like the whole world's falling apart, you see it that way. So it's the antithesis, it's the exact opposite of that, right? And expectations. If you expect good things, like I'm telling everybody, like, hey, it's the end of the year. You should have your biggest sale ever in 2022. Yeah. They're like, well, why? And I'm like, why not?
Why not? Exactly.
Why not just put down, I attract a $20 million transaction, $100 million when Gary Gold listed the Playboy Mansion with Mauricio. And I was like, of course. Because we sat in a workshop 2 years before and he's like, I want to do a multi-$100 million deal.
Yep.
And I remember him calling me, I got it. Right?
And I'm always writing down, I'm going to sell the most expensive house in Los Angeles. Hasn't happened yet, but it will.
Listen, we got time, brother. We got time. So if someone was listening right now and they were like, okay, so just to clarify, the 10-10-10 is, what do I need to let go of that's holding me back? That's like that parachute resistance. The next 10 is then, what am I grateful for? And then the last 10 is, what are your intentions? What are your expectations? What are your goals? What are the things you want to accomplish? So doing something like that for a decade or so
30 years.
Kind of impacts your mind.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you say to the person that's like, oh, I've tried that before?
We haven't done it long enough, hard enough, and consistently enough. And like you've been talking about the 30-day no news.
Yeah.
I have not watched the news or listened to news since the Twin Tower collapse in 1991 and that day.
Yeah.
I don't watch the news. I mean, occasionally I'll listen to the news for 5 minutes on a Saturday or Sunday in the car.
Just to remind yourself why
just
not
to. Kind
to.
of know what's going on. Just,
much.
Are we open? Are we closed with COVID and all that kind of stuff? But I don't put that in my world. I don't allow it in there. I mean, if anything bad enough's going to happen, you're going to hear about it.
Right. Yeah.
So
you know who said that first? And we saw him on stage at the same time was Mike Vance.
Oh.
He's like, if a world war breaks out, someone will let you know.
That's right.
Someone will let you know.
Yeah.
So just stay focused on what you want.
Yeah.
So the mindset stuff is so important. You have a backup question on mindset?
I want to see where it goes with this. I want to go back to what you were talking about earlier. Like, you had this deep motivation and longing to be in the luxury lifestyle.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of agents resistance. I think some people are afraid that they're not worth the money on the commissions, but I think a lot of agents are intimidated by the people. They talk about affluent clientele and how they're so much different. I just wonder, what was the motivation behind wanting to be living a luxurious lifestyle? Was it the lifestyle itself, or was it to be like the people living that lifestyle?
Was it wanting to get away from the situation you were at?
No, I had a very lovely home. It was not fancy. I mean, luckily, I will say this, I had a lot of exposure, and
That's
exposure is critical.
Yeah.
So being half French and half Korean, from when I was 6 years old, first thing, my parents put me on a plane on Air France by myself. I flew to France.
Remember the little,
with a little lanyard.
and then the little lanyard, your ticket, right?
And my aunts and cousins picked me up. I didn't speak a word of French. They only spoke French. But I went to Europe every single summer for 3 months. Not in a fancy, on the farm with my relatives in the country, but I saw chateaus. I saw the Louvre Museum. I saw art and culture. And it exposed me. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot more out there than what
Yes.
I'm used to.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be part of that. And then once I started making money in real estate, I did used to buy a lot of stupid shit, which you told me not to do, and I don't.
Yeah.
But I remember it was the first year I made $280,000, and we like to travel. So I remember we booked a 3-week cruise in the best penthouse suite on the Crystal, and it was a week in Monte Carlo at the Hotel de Paris, and then a week in Rome at the Grand in Rome, and it was. I think it was a quarter of my gross income for the year
trip.
for the trip.
Yeah.
Net. I mean,
Yeah. Yes.
but I knew I had to do it.
You're like, oh, wait a minute, I have to pay taxes.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yes. That's a whole other podcast.
But what's interesting is
Miracle every day.
on this cruise with 1,000 people.
this
one of
is the key.
days
This is the key.
On the boat, we were sitting at the lounge chairs. We met this couple from Beverly Hills. We became friends.
Yeah.
So when I did physically move to Beverly Hills, my first referral was from them. A very wealthy Indonesian family had just built this 24-unit condo building in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
They didn't want to sell it. They wanted to lease it. But this is back in like 95 or 96. They were like 4,000 to 8,000 a month rentals. And I had the whole building exclusively.
In 95, 96.
Yeah.
That's
So I was making about 120,000 a year just from strictly, and I was doing mostly double end deals on
Right.
those units because they come to the sign and
Yep.
all that. And today, from that one referral, that one of the buyers, one of the tenants that bought, referred me to a client. That buyer and became a seller. We've done 60 million in deals.
Wow.
But it came from the cruise to the rental building to this referral to that. So
Yes.
But like I said, you got to spend money to make money. You got to be part of it, live it, be it, so people feel comfortable with you.
Right.
And then they're comfortable referring you. So,
Right.
so,
I would also make the observation, like, I think a lot of people, this is just my hallucination.
yeah.
I think a lot of people look at those who are affluent, like maybe an agent who wants to break into the luxury space,
Yeah.
and they see a divide, like a line of demarcation between people with money and then people like me. And I think if I could, it looks like you looked at that lifestyle and said, they have that lifestyle, I want that lifestyle too.
Yes,
And
yes.
it wasn't so much about, am I one of those people? It was more like, they're people having that lifestyle, but I can too.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very distinct difference in terms of how a lot of other people look at the luxury space, if that made any sense at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go.
And what's interesting is, I was, 16, started modeling, and I was involved in the fashion world. So going to Milan and Paris and Tokyo and doing shows and all that, you meet a lot of rich people and see very expensive clothes. I couldn't afford the clothes. And of course, you get some things from the designer at cost occasionally. That wasn't often. The old saying, fake it till you make it. So I was going to the Goodwill, Salvation Army. I was buying used clothes and like Armani suits and jackets and cashmere sweaters for $2 and $5. I would wear it and I felt as good as if I bought it on Rodeo Drive.
Right.
But it's all I could afford. And I remember I went to Thailand. We were very young and I couldn't afford any real watches. So I bought a whole bunch of fake watches that broke in like 2 days.
Yeah.
But I felt like, oh, look at me and my fake Cartier watch that broke.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to, feel comfortable in the clothes and all that. But that helped, certainly.
Yeah.
What's so interesting today is you think about how many people we know in the high end around the world that like the guys I talked to in Jackson Hole, that they're like in jeans and like a beat up cowboy, like this kind of look, and
they're multi-billionaires.
and like and the ones that are helping them buy and sell real estate, they're doing $100, $200, $300 million in sales, killing it, $15 million sales prices all day long, $25 million sales prices, and the key distinction is they're comfortable in their own skin.
You have to be yourself.
And that's where we got to get to, right?
Yeah,
You got to get to, like, if you want to move up your price range, you got to stop looking at them and start looking at yourself and saying, hey, look, everybody puts their pants on the same way.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to get into the marketing side in a minute.
Yeah.
But before I want to go back to your point. Two things, actually, you both said it. One is be aware of your confidences. So there's a lot of people listening right now that are confident that they can't go into the high end. They're confident that they're not good enough. They're confident that, only people like Christophe can do this. I didn't go to Paris or France or, growing up as a kid. So be aware of your confidences because those confidences are going to hold you back. You're confident about other things. You're confident about riding a bike, driving your car, taking a $500,000 listing. Like, what's the difference?
Agreed.
It is only the conversation that you're having with yourself. Yeah. It is only the conversation you're having with yourself.
Everything takes time. I mean, you can't expect to just jump in and move to Beverly Hills and all of a sudden you're going to sell these multi-million dollar homes.
No.
You got to.
Sarah Desimore in Miami.
Yeah. Well, and I think creating a line of demarcation where there's rich people and there's people like me, I think that is a dangerous.
That's the beware of the confidences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're rich because they chose that lifestyle,
Yeah.
went after it.
Right.
And most of the,
Right.
as you well know, most of the really rich people came from nothing.
Right.
Most of them didn't even go to college.
Right.
Right.
So we all started the same way, just we're in
Yes.
different places based on where they are.
Which is when I look at like Tim Smith, who you know well too,
Yeah.
right? So I look at like Timmy's listing presentation. He's just like, tell me about you.
Yeah.
How'd you guys get to this place?
Yeah.
Like, how'd you guys get to this house?
Yeah.
Like, he loves the backstory. And you know what? You know what I know about all human beings, not just people that are like wealthy? They like to tell their story,
Of course.
right? It's like their favorite subject.
WIFM, what's in it for me? That's all they
Right.
care about.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so one is be aware of your confidences, but the other one is that whole fake it to make it. Like, you and I basically grew up together in this industry. So you, like my dad driving around in Rolls Royces.
We were both like 20, 21 when we first met.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we both celebrated our 21st birthday when we weren't 21 at Costa's at the Desert Springs
That's
Marriott,
right.
just
Oh my
saying,
God.
passing each other's fake IDs. But I remember distinctly hearing people like Brian Tracy, early mentors, saying that. And like, so my dad had all these fancy cars, and I had like two motorcycles to start, right? Like a Honda 125cc
Humble
motorcycle, right? And I remember like he would say, "Hey, just get the cars washed on Thursday." So I would drive one on Monday, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday, one on Thursday, and then get them all washed, right? And I would go and I would take these expensive cars, right? Completely pissed him off nonstop, but I didn't care. And I would go to open houses. I'd go to broker previews and I'd walk through these houses. I'd pull up this fancy car. And I mean, I didn't have a mohawk anymore, but I was still dressed in all black. And there's no way they're like, this Opie kid is not going to buy this house.
Right.
But I started to just get like, he's like, if you just walk in the steps of these people, how many stories, how many books have been written about the super, person that came from nothing, who stayed in the lobby of a hotel just to surround themselves with all these people. So,
Absolutely.
So they became more comfortable in it.
Yeah. And get back to the question about confidence, how do you become confident? Well, first of all, you have to resonate with the luxury. That's really not just want to do because you want to make money or you want to do because it's cool, or you want to be on $1 million listing or whatever. That's not the reason. Do it because it's in your gut and your soul.
Okay.
If it's in your gut and your soul, then you have to figure out, okay, do I know all the architects, whether it's from the 1920s
You're
to
already
the
going
modern
to
Paul
my
McLean's?
preparation. Yep.
Who are the interior designers?
Yes.
This painting, that piece of art, that piece of porcelain,
Yes.
that antique car, is it a Bugatti worth $2 million or is it a fake Bugatti?
Right.
So you got to really know.
Do your homework.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like do your homework, study, prepare, learn what's important to these people. How do they speak? What's important to them? Where do they travel? Right.
And I also knew that at junior high school, because my yearbook teacher in junior high school, she was an artist. She was really cool and she really got me. So she had all of the best magazines, W Magazine and Vogue, Italy and Europe. And I would look at these magazines and I'd see the beautiful jewelry and the clothes. I'm like, whoa, I never knew such things existed. So I studied all that stuff.
Yeah.
And like now when we go to parties, I'm like, oh my God, that Bulgari necklace with the tourmalines and all that. Like, how do you know it's tourmaline? I mean, people appreciate when you take the time to understand who they are, what they are, and that you know it. Because they don't buy that expensive stuff just to wear it. They buy it to show off too.
Right.
And they appreciate when people recognize what they've done and their accomplishments.
Yes.
Yeah.